Super League spotlight shining so bright. Interviews and news, come join the hype.
Hello and welcome to the first ever Super League Spotlight podcast. Rona, excited?
Extremely excited. When you first reached out and we've been chatting about it and the new name and all that sort of stuff. So you did such stellar work with the WBBL review, which is now no longer. So yeah, new season, new name, new everything.
Yeah, WBBL review in the archives now. But I mean, I've been doing that for about 3 years. So that I'm Mark. If people don't know who I am, I'm Mark, and I've been kind of around the women's game for a bit. I commentate at Durham last season and this season coming up. So that's a bit about me. Rona, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm currently commentator at the Caledonia Gladiators women's team, and I'm also long-time player, pretty much in retirement. So coaching's potentially not for me at the moment, but because I teach, so that's probably that box ticks. But it's great to still be involved at such a high level in the game. I played Scotland age group all the way through from 16s all the way up, captain at Scotland as well, played overseas in Spain for a bit. So I've played quite a bit in my time, but this whole aspect of the game I'm really enjoying, and getting to see the game from a different level without the same playing pressures is really nice for me, and not with the sore knees and the sore back and things anymore, which is always nice.
So I like this, right? You're the expert, and I'll just be here. That sounds perfect to me.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know about that, but I'm sure we've both got opinions. That's why we commentate, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So both teachers and both commentators. So yeah, this is going to be
Love
good.
a captive audience. That's what it is, isn't it? Love a captive audience.
So I don't think I'll get the name of the league right until about December because I keep going to say WBBL. But what is it? SLB? WSLB?
SLBW. And the reason I remember is because up in Scotland, the league I play in is the SLBA. So it's the Strathclyde Local League Basketball Association, which is like the lowest entry you can play in. So I'm like, these girls, we are one step away from, greatness of professional basketball. And they're one step away from amateurs, 90 minutes a week, fighting with badminton and all sorts. So that's how I remember it in my head, the SLBW.
Right, sorted. I've got that now. I've got it. So let's talk about for people kind of tuning in for the first time. What do we want this to be? What do we want this podcast to be over the whole season? How do you see it?
I think the way I see it is it's a one-stop shop, a place for people to come to find out what's been going on that week, maybe hearing some little tidbits here and there. Depends on how hard we manage to shake those tidbit trees, and sort of our opinion on the games of the weekend. I think there's some amazing work gets done on the men's side, and we see lots of podcasts coming out all talking about that, but it'd be great, to elevate the female game as well, and parity, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to kind of inviting some guests on the show, making sure we kind of cover things that you probably don't normally see, maybe some opinions of coaches or even owners of teams, and the background of what makes a team run, and kind of things like that. I'm looking forward to kind of delving into things that you probably don't normally see.
The interesting, the behind the scenes, the nosiness, why do clubs do things the way they do, because obviously as a general public we don't, and supporters, we don't maybe always get to see that. And also just the graft these pro players are putting in, male and female, behind the scenes, to make sure their bodies are ready and they're in good shape, and with the international windows coming up and how they balance that. And yeah, I don't think it's the walk in the park that sometimes people think it is.
Yeah, you kind of sit on your armchair, don't you, and go, well, why are they doing that? Why are they not communicating that? But sometimes, obviously, there is reasons, and hopefully we find that all out this year.
Mm-hmm.
So last year in the league, we saw Lions go undefeated. We saw Cardiff not get a win. We saw 50-point games from Janika Griffith-Wallace. What can we expect this year?
I think you can expect all the teams to have been thrown in a washing machine, jiggled around and pulled back out, because I know we're going to touch on it later, but league predictions, different things. And I do think the league is going to look different. I think there's been investment, in different areas across the league. I think players have come, players have gone. players from last season have maybe moved, from example, from the Riders to the Rebels. We've got Alliance player up at Gladiators. There's definite movement there. We've had quite a big GB representation over the summer between the 3x3 on the women's side and out playing in the pre-qualifiers in Rwanda. So we've got a lot of that GB talent that has stayed in the league. So I think there's going to be lots of different things going on. I think teams, I don't want to give away my predictions, teams that potentially last season you'd be like, okay, pushing to get into the playoffs, or maybe going to be challenging for the playoff title.
Yeah, and I think there's so many positives around the league, and everyone seems to focus on negatives, but I like to be positive. I'm a glass half full kind of person. And when kind of you look at the setup at Caledonia, I was there at the weekend, and that arena and the facilities that they've got are amazing. You look at Newcastle getting 800 plus to each women's game, and kind of strides being made by loads of different teams, that'll hopefully continue throughout this year.
Indeed, and they've also got, I know there's been a lot going on in the men's side, but there's more teams on the women's side as opposed to the men, and that is quite unusual. And I know there's different levels of setup and different things that go on, and maybe more university tie-ins. But I think having teams in the league that are raising their standard is only going to help it overall. And I know they've spoken about having a sort of bottom line, like you can't go below that on the men's side. And I think on the women's side, that's going to be good if we can implement that as well, where, everybody's keeping pushing. And I know I've been very fortunate last season to speak to every coach before every game, and the passion that comes through, and they genuinely want to be there. It's not, and they're usually juggling several jobs. There's several coaches I speak to, and they're wearing multiple hats, but they're there because they love the game. They love, developing the players, and that's what you need. That's what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the roles that some of them have linked to universities, as you said, a lot of them coach the Bucks teams, and you must have a passion. You must have that drive to want to do that every day and kind of improve people and improve yourself. So I know you're itching to get onto the predictions. I can tell you. It's
really more I've got like the nervous sweats because I'm like, somebody's going to be raging, and I take that really personally. But I was like drawing them up last night, so I think if I just say them really fast, quite a thick accent, maybe I'll get away with being like, oh no, that's not what I said.
A Scottish accent and a Geordie accent not the best for people to understand what we're saying. So
No.
Perfect. Right, should we start at the top?
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
I've got I don't know. I've got a top three.
I had a top three, a bottom three, and then in the middle, I was just throwing some ideas around my head.
Right. Who have you got winning?
Oh, is this how we're playing it? So you're like, hang me out to dry.
And then I'll just come in and I'll just come in.
So I obviously totally neutral down the line, commentator, gone Gladiators.
Yeah. I'm absolutely not biased at all. I don't know, because I know it's early in the season, but they struggled in pre-season. My top three, right? Auckland,
I'm not going to
Caledonia,
disagree with
Sheffield.
you there. You've gone Auckland's, Caledonia, Sheffield. Okay.
Yeah. I think those three are quite interchangeable.
Yes, I went obviously Caledonia Gladiators, then I went Auckland's Wolves, then I went Sheffield Hatters.
Okay.
That was sort of how I saw that playing out, but I was trying to put on multiple hats to try and predict the future of what might come in and goings, and if this team picks up maybe an injury to a key player there, how would the rest of the team back that up? Where is the rest of the team to back that up? That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then I was trying to build in for the ones below that. I was building in distance travelled, and I was tying myself up in knots, to be honest. Some people say I overthink. Don't know what they're talking about.
I'm not sure where they get that from.
Don't know where that comes from. So, but that was the top three. So I think from what I've seen in pre-season and from looking at the lists and from doing some research on the players and stuff and knowing the coaching staff that are in place in these teams, that's where I've gone with the top three.
It's hard, isn't it, though? Because there's quite a lot of new players coming into the league, and you just don't know. You just don't know how they're going to settle, how they're going to knit together with the team. So I know we're predicting it here, but this is our disclaimer to get away with anything.
And if I'm right, I told you so.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I've got them fourth, but I'm really intrigued by Manchester.
Okay. So
I,
I thought Manchester was interesting because I was on the website and stuff last night and they've not actually got any players uploaded. I know they have announced lots of players, but actually
yeah.
on the website. So like maybe it's to teach me like they're getting marked down for that because they have not submitted on time. But I know there's lots going on there as well, and there's amazing work getting done at Manchester.
hmm
But for that reason, I actually had them 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
I can see why they could potentially go up. I think it's hard. It's hard to know. But they are bringing in players of a good caliber.
hmm
But again, and I put Essex above them because I think they're always quite a dark horse team. They tend to recruit well. You know, they've got a great facility down there. They put on a great game day. You know, they've got returners, they've got players that aren't new to the league, but you know, they're moving across to Riders. So that's why moving across to Rebels, sorry. So that
Yeah.
was why I popped them above Manchester.
I may be wrong with this, but I'm sure they finished fifth last year, which was their highest finish in the
Mm-hmm.
league, like overall, I think. And you're going one better. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got Leicester coming in fifth.
Okay.
Just possibly similar reasons to Essex in terms of like they tend to recruit well. Yeah, I don't think you can write Leicester off completely.
No, I went down into six. So that's, I guess, we've kind of gone the same three again, but just in a slightly different order.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and actually, interestingly, I'd put Leicester fourth, then Riders fifth, and then I was like, oh, I feel like Manchester, Essex. So yeah, I'm just throwing it out there.
I think you're right though. We've got like probably the same bottom three, the same top three, and a bit just washing machine in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that leaves us with Durham, Newcastle, Nottingham, Cardiff, and London. Is
This
that
is where it
right?
gets controversial. Yep.
Well, yeah. Can I put Newcastle above Durham and get away with it?
Oh.
Now,
I'll be going
I
straight
am.
to Liam. Like he put him above, and you've got
Yeah,
him commentating.
I'll be off the commentary in a flash.
At least people
I
will know you're
think,
neutral.
yeah, I think getting picking up Marina from Newcastle's huge for Durham.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's going to improve Durham, and we'll talk about Newcastle's game on Sunday in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could tell it was early in pre-season, so it's hard to again judge what it's going to
Yeah.
be like. I think I probably will go Newcastle above Durham.
Okay. Yeah. I've gone after Riders. I've gone Eagles, Wildcats, Durham, London, Cardiff.
Oof.
People come at me.
Well, right, okay. I've got Newcastle, Durham, Nottingham, Cardiff, London.
Oh, I know. The thing, I guess the talking point there potentially is London, but and I think the point of this is I was watching some of the Ipswich game at the weekend and they were talking about the Euro Cup winners, etc. And yes, the London franchise is and was that, but I think people universally accept that this is not the same team. And I think that's a lot for the girls coming into the team, the expectations and that sort of, oh, we're going to beat London this year. And it's a very different group of players that they've brought in. They've obviously gone young
Mhm.
British talent, a lot of it returning from the States. And that's, I think, tough on them. And also when I was looking at, their list that's published, they've got like 7 players. And I think there'll be a lot of growth there. And I wouldn't be surprised, if they bring in a couple of players
Yeah.
and they could, push themselves further up. But purely on pre-season and that first sort of set of trophy games, that's why I've gone where they are, because I think they'll be potentially in quite a developmental era, and there'll probably be things that happen and go on that potentially will maybe strengthen them. But there were some good performances there. It wasn't like they overly
Yeah.
struggled. But I do think, they're not the same team as they were. That team of what was effectively superstars have all moved on and dispersed into different places, whether it was the WNBA, whether they're about to play in the Super Cup, tomorrow night at Holly Winterburn. It is a very different looking team. It's not even retained like a core squad like they'd had in previous years.
Yeah, I have put them bottom, but I do think a couple of additions that would probably change things a little bit, because Cardiff look like they've gone very young as well, very young team.
I don't know if people have gone younger or if I've got older. Don't know what the difference is. I'm like, is everybody getting younger or am I just getting older? Like
A few players jumping in at like 15 last year in the league when Nottingham I think had a
yeah.
Tiana Chambers Desmond was young. She played a few games last year. Let's move on to players then. Anyone really standing out for you? Who should we watch out for?
I went with 4.
Okay.
So, and 3 of them are new to the league, purely because I was like, your eye tends to get drawn because you know what other players can do. When they stuff the stat sheet, you're very aware of that, like Hodges at the weekends.
Yeah.
She put up an amazing double-double. You're like, cool, that's what she does. Like, and that sounds, it sounds like you're dismissing it, but it's not. But that is what she produces as a player, and that's what she brings to the team, and that's why she's brought back. But I've gone with Tiana McGee-Pleasant. I saw her play at PlaySport. She didn't play in the weekend's game, which I was like, okay, that's a statement then if they've gone out and won against Riders missing her. She was playing, as was Brooke Flowers, so I'm going to mention they've both been playing NBL 1 out in Australia. And she was posting for almost 16 points and 8 rebounds a game. She looks like a powerful, athletic player that could cause problems for teams. Seems quite mobile with it. So I'm not sure why she was sitting out. I'd imagine it was some sort of injury. But I think she's someone to look out for, 6'3" as well. Brooke Flowers was somebody else I like the look of. Just over 9 points, just over 8 rebounds again out in Australia. 6'5", could cause a lot of problems. Posted as sort of like a centre, could be a bit of a power forward as well. And I also picked up Maya Price. Then I realised I have a thing about power forwards / that sort of mobile centre. And I think it's because that's what I'd like to be when I grow up. Like I'm like in my head, that's what I'm like. I'm like 6'3" and just bashing my way about. But and I also think Maya Price, coming from the London Lions, where she'll have learned from the likes of, Temi, Megan Gustafson. I mean, that's a pretty good duet to be learning from. And now she's going to have that increased role. We'd sort of touched on it in comms at the weekend, but I just think, and what she produced at the weekend was solid performance. It was good. It's very early days, but I think her growth this season could be amazing. So they were sort of the 3, and then I was like, okay, I can't be leaving out the guards because a lot of the time they do a lot of the hard work, and I'm like, just break that press. I'm waiting here, waiting on you coming down. So I went with Kaya Harrison, who had 15 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists at the weekend. Although they didn't take the win, she's a first-year pro coming out of Wake Forest. It's always interesting to see how the first-year pros adapt. Different style of play, being away from home. You're at a college. I know they can transfer various things nowadays, but you can be there 3-4 years. So it can become very comfortable, and the coaches, but now stepping out her comfort zone. But it looks like she settled in absolutely fine at the weekend. So and I think Riders tend to get that sort of player at their sort of guard position. They tend to recruit somebody like that. We saw Sam Ashby there last year, so I think she'll be interesting to watch. And I think there's just several players have come in, but you can look at all the stats, I think, till the cows come home. But how do they adapt to this league? How do they adapt their new coach? How do they adapt if they pick up niggles and injuries? And there's so many variables. But I think they'll be interesting to watch. I've seen pretty much 3 of them so far. So I'll be interested to see what else comes of that.
So I've gone a little different, because something we've touched on already is the amount of players who've kind of moved from one team to another team, and I'm interested to see how kind of some of those moves go.
Okay.
I mean, we've got Beckford Norton going from London to Oakland. We've got Sam Ashby moving. We've got Taylor O'Brien going to Essex. Caledonia have picked up a couple from around the league. So I'm interested. So I've gone Shannon Hatch at Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
And I know she went 0 from 8 on Sunday. But,
sorry for bringing that up, Shannon.
Yeah, sorry,
she's
Shannon.
maybe just got over it.
She couldn't buy a basket, but she was like 20 points a game at Cardiff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good pickup. She was in Italy and Switzerland last year. Like 9-10 points a game there. I think she's going to be really good for Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully. I think Kachuda. I think obviously she's gone to Caledonia from Essex. Really, really good shooter. I'm looking forward to seeing how she does up in Scotland. And I've mentioned it already, but Marina at Durham.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see how that one goes and how she fits into Lee's play style at Durham, and especially at the weekend as they take on Newcastle already.
Oh, yeah, just a wee trip, just a wee jaunt. I think that is an interesting point because players get recruited to other teams from within the league because they put in great performances, and coaches get to know them and their personalities. So it's, can they then replicate that again? Or did it just happen to be the system worked for them and they fitted? So I think that is an interesting aspect of it, both as a fan and as a player, to see how you adapt and how you change, and because that's what it's about. You've got to keep evolving, don't you, as a player, and work with the systems and work with who's with you. And I think sometimes as well, like Shannon Hatch at Cardiff would have been such an integral part there, because often they don't have the same budget or facilities and support around them. Whereas going into Newcastle, where you do have facilities, you've got other, import players of a calibre as well. So will that create her more space and take a little bit more pressure off her? Or is she going to have to switch into a slightly different role where she's not having to score 20, 30 points a game, but she's going to have to facilitate, be hitting the picks, maybe not doing the things on the stat sheet? Whereas before she was maybe stuffing the stat sheet because of her role.
She's got Lauren Seiki there as well, who she played with at Cardiff, so that chemistry probably will help the transition. So let's move on. Let's talk about Caledonia a little bit more, because they are the only team now competing in Europe.
They are.
Let's just give a little shout out to London. I know you mentioned it before, Euro Cup champions. How important do you think that whole run was for London and for British basketball?
I think it was immensely important, and I think it spoke a lot of the team as well when they had to go out and play after it was announced they were going to have their team cup, and they still went on to achieve what was greatness. And I was very fortunate that we actually went down to the game, and it was some night, it was some spectacle. Like, I found myself booing and all sorts, which you can't do as a commentator, funnily enough. So I had a great time, and it was such an amazing event to see the people queuing up outside the Copper Box. I lived in London for quite some time, and I would go to games, and there was like 7 other people there. That's a bit maybe of an exaggeration, as in small, not big. But it was amazing to see it, and it packed out. And it just feels, in a way, like it fell off a cliff edge, because then the team's not there. It's now Besiktas going out to play in the Super Cup when it should have been them. They lose out on their qualification, the EuroLeague. So I think it was important to do, and it was an amazing event to have hosted, which is why I made such an effort to be there. So I was like, when might this happen again in my lifetime? I mean, hopefully Caledonia go to push it that far and it evolves. But I think it's great to have Caledonia back there. I think it shows just what Alison and Steve Timoney, they've set out their stall. They want the men's and women's on an equal paving. The men are out competing, the women are out competing. They're back out there competing as well. I think both teams surprised the leagues in general with how well they did. I think Caledonia this year, on the women's side, they have a tougher group. You've got Montpellier there, who went out last year in the quarterfinals. They topped their group. They're bringing back a French silver medalist at the guard spot. So, that's going to be really interesting for them. Different sort of games, different calibre potentially of teams. I do think they could take a win here and there if they can get things to work and to click. And I think that's where they got their trophy win at the weekend under their belt. So they can use that to build upon those positives moving forward. But they're also going into a really tough run of games where I was looking it up, and their next home fixture for the SLBW is, I think, the 24th of November
Oh,
against
wow.
Cardiff. So that's their next home non-European game. So that just shows how many, they've got a couple of Europeans in between that at home. Obviously the first one on the 9th of October, and then they're just on the road for all their SLBW games. So that's going to be a lot for those players, especially who've maybe not done that before, adapting to that, you know, packing your bag, unpacking your bag here, not there, like the eating side of it, the hydrating side of it, the flying, you know, we're heading into flu season. There's just so many variables, plus this expectation that they're going to perform really well in the league and in the trophies and in the playoff, you know, so that's a lot, but that's why you play to win, and you play to win it all. And if you're not there to do that and thrive on that, then you're probably in the wrong job.
Something kind of not new this year, but Chantel Handy is officially now head coach. Obviously, towards the end of last season, she was given that role to step up. But as a new coach kind of coming through, how do you think she'll take on these challenges?
I think, again, she's got such a vast experience as a player. You know, she's been in these situations as a player, so she'll be able to understand and empathise with our players. But I think also on the flip, she'll be able to be like, okay, you need to step it up now. I know how it feels, and I know how intimidating venues can be or travel, but you now need to step up to plate, and it is possible, but this is what's going to separate you. She's obviously got her GB under-20 experience, and then you've also got Donny McDonald there, who in his own right is an excellent coach. You know, he guided the under-16 GB women to promotion this summer. So I think together, and I'm saying this because it's over a screen and I shouldn't see them for a little while, but I think at times they could be chalk and cheese, but that will complement each other really well. You know, I think you often see the passion from Chantel, whereas Donny often doesn't look like he's breaking a sweat, and we all just handle it differently. But I think that'll be really good for their own coaching team, and also with the players, because you need that balance. And also with Chantel then officially stepping up, Miguel stepping out into his head of basketball role, that gives Donny more of a chance to sort of mould that assistant coach role into what he wants it to be as well, and how he can best support Chantel in her role, but also with pushing through the players. He knows obviously the younger girls, Alex, Kerry and Emma, very well, bringing them through the high performance programme. So yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts, but a lot of really good positive things there as well.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see how they do. Representing obviously the British League in Europe. So yeah, good luck, Caledonia.
Indeed. I just wish they could get somewhere that's like one flight from the UK.
Yeah.
You know, from Glasgow Airport's not the most like biggest of choice anyway, but yeah.
Let's have a look then at the weekend, because after 5 months, the league was kind of back in action. Let's talk about the Newcastle Caledonia game we were both at. 69-53, Caledonia take the win. What were your initial thoughts on, obviously commentating on it? What did you kind of notice from that one?
I think the biggest takeaway was at the end of the game, when I was writing down stats, you know, so I had them for next time. Dad Rutledge gave me that little tip there. He's like, and I was like, oh, that makes total sense to write them down at the end as opposed to back. Anyway, I digress. And I was surprised to see Caledonia had won every quarter. I was like, okay, the game didn't feel like that to me. And when you're calling it's quite different, because obviously you're trying to just keep it black and white, and you're very much what's going on in front, or if there's gaps in play or whatever. But it didn't feel like Gladiators were that in command, that they did win each quarter. And I mean, I know we talked about this briefly before we came on about if Eagles had scored their free throws, they'd have won by 3. So they could have missed 2 of their free throws. But that obviously shows Caledonia were fouling a lot, sending them to the line. But then that's something where the Eagles could tighten up. And I wonder how frustrating that would maybe be for Matt Newby. Or does he see it as like, okay, we took the loss, but I can see where we need to change things. But also you'd like to hope from the Gladiator side that the fouling wouldn't be as prolific, as maybe the best way to put it, in the next game. And, you know, Eagles won that battle of the board still by 5. but Caledonia shot 42% to Eagles 26%. So that's basically where the game has been won and lost. I would say sometimes, especially that second half, Caledonia's defence was very good at putting Eagles under more pressure on their shots. A lot of them were maybe running or pulling back jump shots sort of off balance, whereas down at the Caledonia end, they were maybe getting better looks. But I still think both teams will have taken plenty away from that. I don't think Caledonia will walk away going, great win, awesome. And I don't think Eagles will probably go away going, oh, that was hideous, we lost by 16, etc. I think, both sides will take good things from it, but also plenty to work from. How was it as a spectator, to sit literally the opposite side of the stadium from each other? So you generally had like the flip view to me.
Yeah, I mean, I felt Caledonia were never going to lose the game. There was the first quarter was quite tight, and the Eagles did miss quite a few free throws in that first quarter. I think at one point Caledonia had 8 fouls, and the Eagles hadn't made a foul yet.
Oh, it was like a Christmas tree. One side.
Abby Lowe was going to the free throw line every play, but like at one point, Hannah Robb and Kirsty Brown were sitting down on the bench after 2.5 minutes because they were both on 2 fouls, and I think that didn't help the rhythm of the game, especially early on in the season as well. But you're right, 19 free throws missed from Eagles. That's a huge number. So I've already mentioned Shannon Hatch's shooting stars. I'm not gonna mention them again.
Her girl will be like, never listen to that podcast.
Well, I mean, Eagles 21 offensive rebounds, but only got 6 second chance points. So again, just didn't make the most of their chances, which, as you said, 26% shooting percentage isn't going to win you a match, I guess. But I love visiting Caledonia. Like the arena and the spectacle that they make is brilliant. The fan zone. I mean, the food's a bit expensive, like.
Oh no, that's cheap.
No, but I love it. It's
you got to pay for quality, Mark. You got to pay for quality.
That's true. That's true. How can you afford the trips to Europe if you don't?
yeah. That private jet ain't paying for itself.
But no, I think, as you say, I think Newcastle probably think like, oh, that might have been there for the taking if we played like, if 2 weeks down the line we had a few more practices under belt, that they might have thought, oh, we could maybe challenge that. But Caledonia probably more polished by then as well. So yeah, it's just, I think one of those early not pre-season games, Betty Cordona Trophy games that Caledonia, as I said, didn't ever look like losing, but lots of things to work on, lots of positives. Yeah, I think you're right.
I also, Tia Adams was out and obviously played elsewhere last season, but played for Caledonia in their first season out. And we know she's someone that can put the team on her back. She was part of that team that ended the Lions streak. So I think bringing her back in will be a massive boost as well. In terms of scoring power.
Yeah.
So I think that's still to come.
So Caledonia get a week off this week, don't they?
They do indeed.
And then they travel to Durham the week after to finish off that group with Newcastle.
Yeah, and they've got Freiburg on the 9th of October at 7:30 at PlaySport. I'm sure tickets are available via the Fanbase app. Does that make us a
hashtag? Are we on commission or?
No, I was just about to say hashtag ad, but it's not because nobody has paid me.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, not a thing.
Maybe I'll get a free donut.
You mentioned London streak. Let's move on to London. The streak has ended.
It has. And I think if you were, you see these things like, if you were to ask me on a deeper level, I'd be like, if you were to ask most people on a deeper level, they would probably not have seen London winning. Ipswich were invited into the Betty Cordona Trophy for a reason. They weren't there to make up numbers. They've come in with something to prove. It was their home game. And, they've got Harriet Whelan. They've got some very good players there. Just because they're not playing up in the SLBW doesn't mean, they're maybe not capable. So, I think, was it an upset? Then yes, on paper. but is it a massive surprise? Potentially no, especially when you saw London had their 7 players. They all sort of played 20 plus minutes. I'd say even within that, it's not as if there's like a clear rotation or a clear 5. It's very much bleeding the players in, getting them court time. You know, we did see a really good performance from Chinwei with 19 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. So, you know, Macy Spinks put up some good numbers as well. So there's lots of positives there, but it didn't look like necessarily they're going, right, here's our 5 or 6. They were very much players, you know, all 20-ish plus minutes. But I suppose when you've only got 7, you're going to have to play, you know, heavy minutes, each and every one of you.
Yeah, so the final score was 104-80. I think the fact that Ipswich scored over 100 as well, I think that always
People
kind of
get excited for that. Like, oh, over 100. I don't know where it comes from. Like, I'm like, that's cool. I've obviously done it so often in my career. I'm like, nah, just another ton.
No, I've been in like obviously plenty of basketball crowds before, and as soon as teams hit that 100 barrier, it's like someone scored a goal in football. It's like, yeah, we got it.
It's like a win bonus, isn't it? It's like a win bonus. Like, I got that. It's like as if, you know, like imagine they added that in. You know, like in rugby, they get, if you get X amount of tries, you get then bonus points.
Yeah.
There we go. There's an idea.
Bonus points if you get 100.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, Harry Wellham, 31 points, team of the week performance. Yeah, a really good show. Right then, so Auckland's Leicester got their seasons underway, 76-69 to Auckland. You've already mentioned this one earlier on. Missing one of their potential star players in this game, and they still got the win.
They did, and what was interesting about this game, the other 2 games seemed a bit more clear-cut, but both teams, both Auckland's and Riders, both won 2 quarters each. It's just, obviously, Auckland's are able to win theirs by more. However, Auckland's did go up to like a 15-point lead at one point, whereas Riders' maximum lead was 2. So I think you can kind of see, and I think that was quite like how Riders played last season. They were very good at chasing a game and never, you know, they were like little terriers. They just never let go. They were always like snapping at the heels, whether they won or lost. And it was just, I think sometimes they do struggle to pull away from teams at times. Watch this space. They'll go and blow someone out next week by like 50. But anyway, on that one game.
I mean, they have got Cardiff on Sunday.
Well, watch this space. No. So I do think, you know, they're very good. They don't give up. You know, they're very much like they keep going. They play till the last minute. And I think that kind of shows that. Whereas I think Auckland's, they were looking good, but I think they've got gears that they can go through. And I think they've got some multiple scoring threats as well. And that's always going to be tougher on teams. But again, that's just for other teams to work out how to stop them defensively.
Yeah, I think as you said before, missing one of the star players, but still managing to get the win. Is that a sign of things to come? It's an impressive start. Obviously, they finished 10th last season, Auckland's. So, we both had them kind of top 2. To make that jump is going to be an impressive season if they do that.
It is, and I'm just a bit like, it's like new logo, who dis? You know, that way, because they've like got the new logo, they've got this fancy new team, you know, and Auckland's are a team who, give them their credit, have been in the league for several years now. You know, Lee Ryan's been there, they've got their development programme, and there's maybe not, they used to heavily rely on that development programme, whereas there's maybe not the same of that. So I'm sure we'll see those hopefully players still getting bled through, because that's what you need for your club to be sustainable. And you want to bring through that young talent. But I think having those players now at the top end, for them to be role models, aspire to. I see that Shanice has been named as captain. So, you know, she's gone from being captain of the London Lions and being brought in. So obviously that shows what she's bringing to the programme. So again, having people like that in your team can only help in the long run. So yeah, and I like the neon logo.
I like the logo. I think their social media kind of presence has jumped up a little bit.
That's what I mean. It's like, what money tree have they shaken? Because I could do with that.
So this weekend coming up, we've got 4 games, and we still don't get to see Manchester. That's the only team at the end of this week we won't have seen yet.
I know, because I know you'd seen when I'd taken the picture with the banner, and I was trying to get all the teams in it, but you just can't because they then don't play until the next one. So I was like, well, that's the banner it's going to be. But I had actually thought about it. But yeah, I think it'll be another interesting week of games. I think, we've called all these things, and probably after this weekend, we could do it totally different, because you'll see how teams change, they adapt, they're on the road, they're back at home. There's so many variables. They've got a game, like an actual game under their belt. I think you can pre-season till your heart's content, but nothing can replicate actually being out there and something actually being on the line. So I think it'll be interesting and it'll be good to watch. And I think there'll be lots of lessons learned as well, from both our point of view and from teams' point of view, from each other, because scouting's not the easiest at times.
Yeah, so what you're saying is prepare for this episode not to be online very long.
yeah.
We'll delete this one and we'll do episode 1 next time.
Or we can call our next episode Growth.
Yeah.
Growth with Mark and Rona. So what we said was when we were young and immature, and now we have gone through a growth period, and now's our real, more of a sense of who we are and what we know.
I like that, Growth. It's like a good name, isn't it? It's like a motivational podcast.
Yeah.
So I think Essex Ipswich is going to be an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Just to gauge like where both teams are and where London might be within that, and I think that's going to be a really interesting game.
Yeah, and I think also we still don't know who teams are going to turn out. They're going to have everybody there. Is everybody clear to play? Like, well, people have brought in more players since then. Well, players have come back from injury that we maybe haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also like, are some coaches playing mind games, keeping some stuff in their locker? You just don't know, do you? It's that's the excitement of sport, especially basketball, because it's just not predictable. It never ends in a draw. Yeah, well, I say that, but pre-season can end in a draw.
I was going to say, unless you're Caledonia in pre-season.
Yep, big fans of that.
So Newcastle Durham, there's 17 miles between them.
Mm-hmm.
See a nice local derby to get people interested.
Yeah, I think it'll be, again, good to see them out. I think Durham had a tough shift last year. That their first game out, it was against Caledonia Gladiators. They didn't even have everybody in their team, so they kind of had to turn up under strength, which was unfortunate for them. So I think going out playing this weekend, although they haven't had a game in the previous weekends, but I think Lee'll have them well prepped. I know that you were in doing some super spy. Maybe you should be telling us. They run in their UCLA cuts. They come up off elevator screens.
So he's already going to cut me off the commentary for saying Newcastle are going to finish higher. So I don't want to ruin it even more.
Yeah.
But no, it will be interesting. Obviously, you've got that added addition of Marina going back to the Virtue Motors Arena to visit Newcastle, where she's been for 4 years.
Yeah.
So and obviously very good friends with Chloe Gaynor, Abby Lowe. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic going into that one.
I think there's no friends on the basketball court. That's the way I see it. And I'm like, I don't know. But I've got lifelong friends, and one of my pals, she played for Edinburgh and I was for a West Coast team, and I remember squaring up to her on court, and then I was staying at hers afterwards, I think, that night. Do you know that way? But it's like, when you're on the court, you're there to win. And I think they'll probably be the same. If anything, I think you got each other harder, because you're just like, I'm going to prove she's not my pal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not my friend, not right now. But then afterwards, yes, not a problem. But I think that's what it's like, literally leaving it all on the court. Whether that's the attitudes or the fact that we won. Just FYI.
And the last 2 games we get to see Nottingham and Sheffield, and then Leicester and Cardiff. I think we could predict who we think's going to win that one. I think we probably would say Sheffield Leicester. Mm-hmm. But I hate to say anything can happen, but basketball early season, someone might catch someone off guard.
They could, but I don't think they will.
I don't think they will.
I'm just going to go, I don't think they will. Not on this occasion. Saw Sheffield pre-season, obviously, when they travelled up to Gladiators, and they're playing some really aggressive style defence. I think Nottingham have got some good players. I think they're maybe a bit youthful out of that sort of guard position. And I think we saw a bit of that last season. So I think that could be quite tough to come up against. But at the same time, you know, if you're young enough, you're good enough. And if you're good enough, you're like, cool, I'll take that pressure because that's what your job is, you know, and you're always going to keep progressing. But I think, you know, Coach Ellis will have them well oiled and good to go. They've also had some great signings. Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting. I'll be intrigued to see the Wildcats in action as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, I would agree with you. Riders taking that win. I think Cardiff are probably maybe not as deep into their pre-season. I could be wrong, but I imagine this will be one of their first games out, and I think Riders are they're not a finished product by any means, but I think, you know, they've got the training hours and things under their belts to go and take care of that.
Right, well, I think we've come to the end. And when you think about all the predictions we made, I think we might need to put our helmets on and just hide for a couple of days.
I know. I'd be like, sorry, what? Can't hear you.
But no, it will be interesting to get everyone's opinion on where they think teams will finish in the league, even at this early stage. And it'll be interesting to see if we do get any disagreements or anyone saying, right, we'll show you.
Yeah, and I've seen I don't want to, in case I misquote, but definitely one of the people I follow on Twitter was Colin, who's going to be MVPs in the top for the men's. You know, so people, I think, why not? Why not put out your predictions out there? It's guesswork, right? At this very early stage in the game. And if you get it right, you look marvellous. And if you don't, hopefully everyone forgets.
At the end of the season, I'll go back to this episode. We'll get the list of who said what, and then we'll see what it's like at the end of the season.
Now, but that wasn't me. That was Felicia.
But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Episode 1 in the books, and if you've enjoyed it, make sure you what do you say, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Make sure you follow us on this journey for the season. As we said earlier, we're hoping to get loads of guests in, delve deeper into British basketball and the WSLB, and kind of trying to get those things you don't normally hear about or don't normally see. I would love to talk to some referees this year as well. That's another one. Everyone loves to criticize
like on the
referee.
podcast or just like shouting
Yeah,
at
no,
them?
in one of our episodes, I think that would be really good to kind of see the world of refereeing, and because everyone criticizes referees, don't they? They can't do anything right. It'd be interesting to hear their side of the story.
They'll be like, that player, I mean, they could just kind of square layup. That's not my fault.
Absolutely. But no, as I said, Rona, absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
We will see you on the next one.
Indeed.